like for years, my videos were made with a C100, which was a 1080p camera. And I was posting everything in 4K, which means that every single clip in my videos were stretched at 200%. No one ever said anything. So does it really matter?
All right, welcome to the latest episode of Game Day Glare. I'm Lance. I'm with E, and this is the podcast for sports videographers. How you doing, E?
Not so well. I'm tired of people asking me about lenses. Keep bugging me. They're asking me what lens should I use, when, where, how. Stops today.
So today's topic is what focal length should you use in sports videography? So you got the camera, you got the gig. What lens do you throw on first? So E, I'll let you lead. I'll let you start. What's your favorite lens? Let's just start there. It doesn't mean you have to use it all the time, but what's your preferred lens, honestly?
I don't know. I don't think I have such a thing as a preferred favorite lens or anything like that. It just everything has a purpose. So yeah, it just depends on what I'm doing, and that's why there's so many of them. Really, if there was such a thing as a perfect lens, there wouldn't be as many, and everybody would have the exact same one. So yeah.
In sports, it's tough, right? Because you need a telephoto lens to get in tight from when you're far away. And you need a wide lens too, to get the action up close, to get those warm-up shots, to get those intimate locker room shots. So you do need a bit of variety, and there isn't one lens that you just snap on your camera and does it all. And I think that's the challenge part that people are struggling with, is when should they switch and when should they stick with what they have on their camera? So hopefully today, we can kind of help you guys out a bit and walk you through what we do in certain situations and what lenses we have in our kit and what our go-to lenses are. So why don't we start with your real world setup, E? You're packing your camera bag. You're going to, say, the Alouettes have started already. You're going to the CFL game. What lenses are you bringing, and what's your thought process with those lenses?
Typically I'll have, now anyway, again, depends on the sport. Because now, if you're talking football specifically, I would definitely have my 70-200. And in the past, I've filmed like football games from start to finish with that lens on. If I'm showing up early, getting like a lot of crowd shots, just people walking in, just atmosphere in general, I would probably start the day with a wider lens so I can capture people from up close as they're getting into the stadium, or maybe at some activations going on outside, a bit of a what's called where people have barbecue,
tailgating.
Tailgating action from up close, that sort of stuff. But once the game starts, I'm pretty much on the 70-200 the entire time. But recently I've started filming wider a lot, so I would definitely go back from time to time to my wider lens. But for a sport like football, I wouldn't do it from the sidelines unless I'm in the end zone, at the back of the end zone when a touchdown's about to happen, or an attempt anyway. It's definitely good to be wide so that you can capture it wherever it happens, and if players happen to celebrate in front of you, you can actually catch that celebration, which is very difficult to do from up close with a 70-200. But otherwise, I'd probably make the most of the wider lens by going in the stands, so I can capture the fans in my shot as well, so that you get kind of that, you get the action, but you also get the reaction from the crowd simultaneously in the same shot. So definitely use wider lenses a lot more these days. But yeah, it's all about using it at the right time, the right way. What about you?
So I'm going to just back it up a bit. I feel like every lens tells its own story, right? So a wide, you're looking for immersive, energetic, kind of in your face, maybe a little BTS kind of thing, and show where you are. A mid lens, so my favorite lens, the 28-75, that has balance. That's for balance, natural lens. Shots, That's my favorite lens. I'm not going to lie. It's my favorite lens. Okay. It lives on it lives on one of my cameras all the time. And then you have your longer lens, your 200, which are for distance and or for getting really, really up close details. And that's how I'm trying to piece my stories or piece my bag when I'm going to an event. Now I have the Tamron family. Very, very big fan of those lenses. I like that they all have the same thread for my ND filters also. Yes, there's no stabilization, but the image is very, very crisp, very versatile lenses and easy to use and affordable. So I'm rocking,
Well,
the
there
17,
is
28.
stabilization if you use the 70 to 180, the second generation though. There wasn't any on the first, but there is on the
Yeah,
second.
I don't have that one. But isn't that an PSC?
No.
The 7180?
Yeah, full frame.
Okay. So I have the 1728, the 2875, and then I have this Sony lens, this electronic Sony lens that's a 20 to 200 f4.5, but it's a crop. But I use it on my A7 IV because when I shoot 60, it's a crop sensor. So then I get the full focal length on that, and I get no little silhouette outline. But if I use it on a full frame, I get a little silhouette outline. So I do use that when I do need a 200, but I usually try and get as close to the action as possible with my 2875 the majority of the time.
But that 200, what did you say, 20 to 200?
Yeah.
Is that like a constant aperture?
No.
Okay.
So it's 5.6, but it's 5.6 when it's at 200. It's a 4.5 to 5.6.
Yeah. Well, that's not too bad.
No, and you know what's cool is on my cameras I can use the electronic zoom.
Cool.
On the handle on that, so it is handy. But yeah, I don't really use it, but I do have the option to use it, and it's a Sony lens, and it does have stabilization built in.
Well, that's good.
It's originally from a FS 700.
Okay. Oh, so it's like a cinema lens almost.
Yeah, it was the kit lens that came with the FS 700 back in the day.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it works good. It works good. The only thing is, I'm not crazy, but I've tried it for photos, just for fun, and it's a video lens. It's a video first lens. Like the photos are so on it, where like my Tamrons are much cleaner for photos, and also because they have a faster aperture, so it does help. But anyway, that's what I use when I'm packing light for a kit lens. And if there's something more that I need, like I've expressed in other shows, I rented a 100 to 400 lens a couple weeks ago, and I have no problem doing that depending on the shoot. So if I know I'm going to need a telephoto lens, well, then I'll just go and rent one instead of buying it for what I need, because I don't use it that often. For hockey, I'm against the glass. I have a broadcast camera, so I don't really need to have a 70 to 200. Especially at the price tag that is. The Sony 7200 is a very reliable, amazing lens, but you have to have quite the budget to get that. It's a $3,000 lens.
Well, I've like now I go with a wide and a telephoto, so I have the 16 to 35 and the 70 to 200. Mid, I'm not too concerned about. But if I was in a situation where I would only bring one lens and try to film everything with the one, it would probably be the Tamron 35 to 150, because that's the, well, I guess like 28 to 75. I have that one too. It's like for indoors, that would probably be more what I would go for. But like if I was to shoot outdoor stuff as well, yeah, the 35 to 150 just gives you that extra push, and it actually can go down to f2. So filming like crowd shots and stuff. But at the same time, I say that, and I filmed a lot of basketball with 35 to 150.
And you have it at 35?
Yeah, well, that's the thing that sort of made me stop using it lately. As soon as I got my wider, the 16 to 35, because I felt like 35, it's just a bit tight when you're filming basketball, like from the baseline, and the players are driving to the basket. they're pretty close. And 35, it just depends on what you're using in your camera. Like if you're using a crop, like an APS-C camera, and that camera has an extra crop when you're filming at 60 or 120, then yeah, 35 starts to feel pretty tight when you're filming, yeah, players driving. So for that reason, the 16 to 35 definitely helps. So yeah, just depends on the situation. Because with the FX3, technically on 35, if I'm filming at 60, I'm fine, but at 120, then it starts to get a bit tight. So yeah, it just depends on the situation.
And it's hard too, right? When you're zoomed in all the way too to follow a play, because you have less room for error. When you're wider, you have more room for error. You know, you get to see the whole play develop. But when you have that 7200 and you're zoomed in all the way, and you have a guy isolated, it's tough. He can make a move that you're not expecting, and all of a sudden he's out of frame. Or when you're wide, you're safe. So I want to bring up like the goal of shots and how to pick the right lens. So what are you typically using a wide shot with? Because this is what people are struggling with, is they're not sure to pick what lens when.
Well,
so
I think you need
your play-by-play, you know?
Yeah, well, I can only tell you about my recipe. I don't know if it's the right one, but I think it's a mistake to say, okay, I'm going to start with the wide lens, for example, and just capture atmosphere and a bit of stuff like that at the beginning, and then switch to the long one and just stick with that one for the rest. Because you need a bit of both throughout the game, especially if it's outdoors, because the lighting, like shots, if you get all your wide shots, during the day, like, let's say it's an evening game. So it starts, the sun's out, it finishes, it's dark, and it's only the lights. So it's going to show. Like you can't just, when you're editing this stuff, if you're going from a shot filmed at 5 p.m. and a shot filmed at 8 p.m., they look completely different. So you want wide shots filmed at every, time of the day sort of thing. So I typically, and even if you're filming indoors, to be honest, it's about being able to have variety with your in your edit. So I typically kind of switch, a bit of wide, then I switch to a bit of tight. I put the telephoto one, and then I do like close up action, and I go back to wide, and I move around in the crowd, getting like nice wide shots of the atmosphere with the action in the middle, sort of thing. Or I go behind the crowd and do like more like creative shots, and then go back to the tighter one and just focus on the action from a few different spots, and then put it on. Like I just go back and forth between the two. So that's how I do it. But yeah, not to say, well, obviously if I'm filming basketball from the baseline, I probably stick to the wide lens. Like I'm not going to use a 70 or 200, but other than that, yeah, it's about sort of every, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes or so, I'll switch basically.
Yeah, I would use the game clock and kind of dictate how I'm going to rotate my lenses. The thing that it's hard is when you switch like when you're filming sports, you're always afraid as a videographer to miss the action, but you're going to miss shots. So don't be afraid to switch your lens and get some crowd shots, get some reactions, and you really have to set up the time to do that. So use a score clock and say, okay, there's 5 minutes left in this period or this half or whatever. Okay, I'm going to get some crowd shots because someone's going to make a big 3-pointer, say, and I'm going to get the crowd reaction, and dedicate yourself to get that shot. If you're switching back and forth constantly and you're trying to, I'm on wide, but now this guy's going for a layup, I'm here, and your footage is going to be all over the place. So plan your shots and plan out what you want. And don't be afraid if you're missing the action. Say if you're just decided I'm going wide in the crowd, then focus on that. Don't worry what's happening on the court. If you miss a dunk, you miss a dunk. Mm-hmm. If you're going telephoto and you're focusing on the far end of the court, we'll just focus on that far end. And you'll get the other shots after. And that's really the challenge, because everybody wants everything. They want to capture everything, and you can't, especially when you're switching lenses.
There's a smart way to switch as well. Like for basketball, for example, there's a lot of timeouts in the basketball game. So definitely, make that switch while you're in a timeout. Football as well, there's always times where there's like basically in between when the possession switch from one team to the other, like that's the best time to switch lenses. So yeah, just do it in a smart way, and you'll limit the chances of you missing anything.
Exactly. Or if you're going to be moving positions, then before you move, plan, switch your lens, and get ready for that new move. So if I know I'm going from courtside to the stands, well, that's when I'm going to put the telephoto lens on. So try and see your moves one or two steps ahead, and be prepared, and it's definitely can help you. And for guys who have like a crop sensor when you shoot 60, or if you're using an APS-C, know your real focal length, because that's going to make a big difference, because your 7200 isn't a 7200. You got to times it by 1.5. So you have even more of a punch in, or your wide isn't as wide as you thought. So these are things that you need to calculate too, just to kind of know where you are and what you're really shooting at. Because there's nothing worse than putting on, say, if I put on my 28 to 75, well, if I have a 1.5 crop, I'm already almost at 50. I'm at like, 40 millimeters already. So I'm not really as wide as I thought. So you have to know this going in, because you don't want to have any surprises.
I tend to use as well, like, because like the wide shots are not just to give like context. It's also about giving, like, basically adding a bit more, making your shots more dynamic, in the sense that like there's the basketball game, but there's also people around it and stuff happening, and also just sometimes just the look of the arena. Just yeah, if you're in a setting that looks good, if you're obviously in a just like shitty old high school gym, then probably not that interesting. But if you can film from behind the bench, for example, behind the crowd, and get their reaction in front of you, that's kind of out of focus while the 3-point is getting made, and everybody stands up and put three fingers in the air, things like that. Like that's an awesome shot. So it's not just about, oh, I use the telephoto for action and I use the wide for context and establishing shots. It's about using the wide to make your videos more dynamic and showing other things than just the action, while still showing the action. Because now the action is only making like a third or half of your frame. So what are you going to do with the other half? That's what the question you should be asking yourself. Like, should I go like super high, for example, and then the court's in the middle and there's like people all around it, or am I sort of behind, like I said, behind the team bench, or behind like a group of fans, and maybe the action is on the right and then the fans are out of focus on the left. So it's about composition. That's what's fun about a wide lens. That's why I'm using it more and more, because when you're shooting tight action with a telephoto lens, you're just following the action, and that's pretty much it. Where when you have a wider shot, then you can actually, try to play with the composition of your shot, or you can sort of place stuff accordingly, try to make it look more symmetrical and things like that. And you can really try to get like a pretty shot.
Well, actually, that's great that you brought that up, because a lot of people think like the long lens is like the pro lens. That's what you need for sports. But honestly, a wide lens probably tells a better story, because the crowd, the atmosphere, that's a main character in sports. And you can't capture that with a 200. You capture it with a wide angle lens to show all that. And that's where framing really comes in hand. You have to frame that wide shot to tell your story. And, like you said, with the 3-pointer, when everyone's putting their hands up in the air, you see the ball going in the background. It's like you're not even really once the ball goes in, you're focusing on everything else. You're focusing on the atmosphere. You're focusing on what's going around in that building. And you're only capturing that with a wide lens.
I agree. So what's the mid lens for then? Why is it your go-to, and you're like, what do you get out of it that you don't get with the other two?
I like the look of it. I feel like 50 is the most flattering image for people, say for interviews and stuff like that. And I also feel like 28 is wide enough to capture a lot of stuff. Yes, the 17 on my other one is that much more wider, but you do get a bit of distortion. Like people, if you're filming an interview and you put on 17, you're going to see people's faces are a little stretched out more, and that where on 50 doesn't do that at all. So I really feel like 28 to 75 covers a lot of range, especially in sports. You could try to get those nice close-up shots. Say if a guy's ball handling or something like that, getting a layup where you just want the hand, basket, and ball in the shot. It can allow you to do that if you're at the close end to it. And 28 is wide enough to get the whole end. And for basketball, especially, you can reach the other side with a 75 and get a decent shot. So that's why I like that lens, and I've used it a lot for hockey. Hockey, though, so at 75, it looks like a wide angle when you're covering the far end. But once they come into your zone, I will go to 50 or 28, and I'm capturing that whole play. And for reels, you're losing a lot of real estate, right? Because you're going vertical. So you want that versatility of having that wide. So 28 for me for a reel in hockey play. It allows me to follow the play in the zone, and then later on, I'll just use keystrokes in my edit to follow that play also. So that's why I really like that lens, and it's not too heavy. Like with a 35 to 150, that's an amazing lens, and it's on my list of upgrades for sure. If I don't get that Sony 50 to 150, which is way out of my price range. But the 28 to 75, it's a light lens. Like it fits on a gimbal. It's portable. It's not that big. Where the 35 to 150, that's a big, heavy lens. It's a little awkward to use, I find. That's it. That's why I asked you to put on a t-shirt. I just want everyone to see, we gave away 2 free tickets to the gun show today on Game Day Glare because E hit the gym before this episode.
It's my OnlyFans.
No, but it's a heavy lens. Like if you're shooting a full CFL game, let's say, with that lens, your arms are sore after, man. It's not a comfortable lens. Where the 28 to 75, I find, for me personally, it's more comfortable. Even though I have bigger arms than you, it's more comfortable for me. Okay.
Yeah, because it's in fact more comfortable always ends up better work, better footage. But yeah, no, I see what you mean. But like that's why I use the wider lens more, because yeah, especially from the reels aspect of it, like everything's vertical these days, and when you get onto the 70 to 200, not only are you filming tighter action, but as the game progresses, you get more and more comfortable, and you're trying to get like super extreme close-ups because first of all you're better at it. Like you towards the end of the game, you're much better at following the action and from up close. So you're getting tighter and tighter, and also it's just more fun, and it looks great on your screen to have like that extreme close up of the ball, or the running back running, or the someone driving to the basket, something like that, or even just like following the ball as someone shooting a 3 or whatever. But then when you actually try to use that in a vertical frame, then doesn't look as good, and there's a lot of keyframing involved in post, and there's all that sort of stuff, and it's not like it's cool playing with speed ramping for a reel, for example, is really fun, but it's also fun to like zoom in, zoom out, things like that, which you can't really do if you're already in an extreme close-up situation in a vertical video. If I zoom in like 150%, then now like the ball is like, it's not even fitting in the screen. So for that reason, it's better to film wider and then play around with it in post than the other way around. So I tend to film a bit wider for the similar reasons that you mentioned. But like, have you with like a telephoto lens? Like, have you gone? Like, I personally never filmed with anything tighter because I get asked a lot, like, oh, should I buy like should I get like a 100 to 400, or should I go up to 600? Because people film their kids playing soccer and they're sitting on the stands at the other end of the field, and they're like, oh, I can't really get good close-up action. So there's solutions always to just get a longer lens sort of thing. And I personally have never filmed with something that has more than 200 millimeter focal length, and I've filmed rugby, soccer, football, like any sport that you can think of on the big surface, even cricket. And I never struggled. Like, obviously my shots could always be tighter in theory, but I don't think it's that necessary. But like, have you ever filmed with something longer than 200 mil?
Yeah. So wide. Yeah, just a month ago when I filmed the hockey tournament, I had a 100 to 400, and I filmed on both my cameras. So I filmed on the A7 IV at 60 frames. So it was 1.5 crop, and it was way too much. Because I was testing the lens also, right? Because it was a rental, and I zoomed in on kids, and I was having a hard time keeping those kids in frame because I was just way too close to the action. So I backed it up on my FX3 when it wasn't at a crop and I was shooting at 60. Because I usually tend to shoot my sports at 60. At 120, I find is overkill. I'll do it if I know I plan on doing 100% slow motion shot of this. But 60, I feel is fine. At 40%, I'm happy with that. Um, anyway, it was the 400 was interesting because I was at one end. It's nice to be at one end and capture a player in an isolation image from the other end, no problem. Like I could just have him alone. It looked like he was skating by himself and track him. And it was a nice focal length because in my viewfinder too, he was like, regular size, like say 3/4 of the way up on the viewfinder. So for me, it was easy to just track him, follow him, get him to do us plays, dangles, stuff like that. It was really, really interesting focal length. Now, when I do broadcast, my camera zooms in a lot more because I'm from one end to the other, and I can capture both ends. But that's a stable lens. It's on my shoulder. It's nice and rigged. I have no shake unless my shoulder or someone bumps into me. I have a zoom on my hand, so I can control that. With the 400, it's hard to zoom out and keep your image steady because you're holding this camera at like waist high. I had a strap, but it's just not meant for that. It's meant to you get your shot, you keep your focal length, and you go with it. You can't really zoom as you go. So that's where it's really, really challenging. I found it better not being at 400. Like it was close. So I ended up using it a lot at like say 200, 250, even 300. For photos, it was amazing. Because when you're taking stills, you have less pressure too. If you miss a still, you take another one, and people want isolated shots of their kids, like to sell after or to post on the website. That's what they're looking for. That's what that lens is really, really for. I used it indoors though. I didn't have a chance to use it outdoor. I'm sure for soccer though, it must be really, really good because it makes the field that much smaller. But the image quality on it was really fantastic, especially like even though it was a 4.5, the lens, the background gets so compressed, and you don't have that with our lenses, our 2.8s, because they're 28 to 75 or 16 to 35. You don't get like you do get the bokeh in the background, but nothing like a telephoto lens. So that is what I really, really did enjoy with the camera the most.
And have you ever used a teleconverter? Is that what they call it? Like a 2x, like
No, well, on my
or
broadcast camera,
1.4?
we have a doubler.
Yeah,
So you
yeah,
flip a little
yeah. Well,
switch
yeah, it's the same thing, but
and you have the
just you
double
had
focal
to.
length,
Yeah.
which is great until you get asked to zoom in. So when we do crowd shots and you get asked to zoom in and you're on your doubler and every little shake is just magnified. So I don't recommend using it because like you guys know the rule, the more zoomed in you are, the more shakes you have in your camera, in your footage. So it's easier
Yeah.
to have you be wider, obviously, for more stable stuff.
Yeah. But I mean, in terms of the image quality as well, like I've never used one myself, but what I remember watching, I don't know if it was a Gerald Undone or someone like that, that was, quite trustworthy. Basically saying that the difference between using the converter to 2x your zoom and just going in post and zooming in like 200%, the quality was pretty much the same, and actually zooming in post was like just a touch better. So from that perspective, it's like, what's the point? Like it's I guess the point is that like once you get in post, there's not as much work to be done. If everything's just way too far and you have to zoom in into every shot, it's just a pain. So might as well put the converter in and skip a step. But other than that, I don't think it saves the quality like people think it does. But I've never used it myself. So that was just something I saw on YouTube. So
Well,
take it with a grain
even
of
I
salt.
find I find my image is cleaner when I'm not using the crop, even though it's
Oh
not
yeah, for
really
sure.
supposed to affect it that much. But your
Oh yeah,
2.8
it
isn't really a
definitely
2.8.
affects because it's you're zoom you're cropping into your sensor like the, so the bigger the sensor, the more quality you're getting. Every time you crop into it, you're losing quality.
That's the biggest difference between like an A7 IV and FX3 or an A7 III is that crop when you're shooting at higher frame rates. Because when you don't have that crop, it's so much smoother, it's so much cleaner your image. And I mean, these are minor. Most people aren't looking for that detail, but as a videographer, and when it's your job, uh, you notice the details and you want it to be as clean as possible.
It comes down to like it's a mix of so many things. Like to me, framing in a way framing like trumps quality in the sense that no one's going to notice if you're doing like a Instagram video and you're worried about a little bit of grain, like you're definitely the only one noticing it and worrying about it. So is it that big of a deal to have like I filmed videos and with my FX30 with the crop like at 4K 120, and you could definitely tell that there was damage done, but adding a few visual like effects and layers of like light leaks or whatever, just a little grain filter to make it look like just no one notices any lack of quality, and everybody's happy. So and sometimes I zoom in like 150% on top of it in post, so it really doesn't matter at the end of the day. But often as the creator, we're working with the raw footage and we're seeing the end result and we're like, wow, there's so much quality that's been lost in the process. Is it the camera? Is it did I import my footage, the wrong way? Did I export it the wrong way? Is it Instagram that's killing my quality? Like, and it's all these things. Well, maybe not the import, but it can be all these different things. But at the end, no one really notices but you. So how much does it bother you is the real question.
Oh, it bothers me because I want the highest quality. What I actually, since you were talking about cropping in, what's the most you would crop in?
To be honest, I've cropped in like 200% many times. It doesn't
Really?
really, yeah. Because if I'm filming, for example, like I was saying, like let's say a 3-point shot, I get in my frame like the player's full body. I can even go a bit higher so that you can see the ball leave. But let's say I'm doing I'm tracking the basketball, maybe slowing it down as well. As I'm slowing it down, I'll also zoom in on it. So I'll zoom in enough so that I can keep it in the middle. Because sometimes like just zooming in 150, if it gets close to the edge of the frame at some point, I won't be able to bring it to the middle because then there'll be a gap. So by going 200, I can really keep it in the middle the entire time. And yes, it loses a bit of quality, but at the same time, as I'm doing that, I might add like a film burn or something, so it just makes up for the little bit of extra grain. And even if I don't, like I said, people don't care. Like for years, my videos were made with a C100, which was a 1080p camera, and I was posting everything in 4K, which means that every single clip in my videos were stretched at 200%. No one ever said anything. So does it really matter? You know what I mean? So it's really not that noticeable when you think that every social media platform compresses every single video, so you lose a fair bit of quality anyway. And obviously, the more quality you have at the start, the better it looks at the end. But I don't know. For me, I'd rather have a dynamic video that has, zoom in, zoom out, movement, tracking, all that sort of stuff, speed ramping. I'd rather have that and less quality than the other way around.
When you had your C100, were your timelines, were they 4K 24 or were you doing 1080 24 and then zooming in 200?
No, the timeline was in 4K. So that way
Oh
I could
yeah.
control exactly how the stretching was being done. But because I'm not a big fan of like editing in 1080p and then just at the end trusting the machine to just
Export.
export in 4K and do it right. I'd rather see what it looks like before I actually export. And you also like you can add like a little bit of sharpness and you know, with the Limetry color effect in Premiere Pro. So I would definitely do that. So there's ways to sort of make up for it. It's not perfect, obviously. And to be honest, like I say that, and that's a few years ago now. So if I look at my footage now, compared to what I'm filming with my FX3, I can definitely notice a difference in sharpness. And I look at it and like it looks horrible to me. But the audio sounds horrible as well because my room was not as soundproof as this one, and I wasn't working on my audio and post as well. So like just everything about my older videos to me in 2025 looks horrible. But back then it looked great. And I think that's, you know, you can say the same thing about pretty much every piece of content ever. So it doesn't bother me that much, but obviously when it's my stuff, I cringe a little bit. But since people tend to like my older videos better than my new ones, I can't say they were that crap. So yeah.
You're always going to be your hardest critic, honestly. And, you know, that was what enticed people to mirrorless cameras right away, was the sharpness, because it was definitely noticeable how sharp the mirrorless cameras are, especially if you look at the older cameras, and it's only getting sharper and sharper. And, you know, these 4K timelines are going to turn to 8K timelines and so on. I tend to still edit a lot in 1080, especially when I do corporate stuff, because they're using it all on like LinkedIn or their YouTube and that. But the reason why is because I can get away some interviews by using one camera and I make it look like I have two, because I get to punch in and keep that quality. And for them, it's very, very important to keep up that quality. Where if I'm doing my own YouTube channel, yeah, then I can punch in 200%, no problem. But like I don't go more than like 120, 130% like for the corporate stuff, because I need to keep that sharpness, because that's what the client is expecting. But in sports, like, you know what? I mean, it helps because you have motion blur, everything's happening so fast. So you really have to like pause a frame and check to make sure, especially when zoomed in, to see if the quality is diminished in that. But you know what? Those are some good tips that you just shared, E, because I'm sure there's some listeners that might be afraid to punch in that much. And now they know, like, hey, E does it on his videos, so I could do it too.
Yeah, and I still do it. And yeah, I'd guarantee you, people don't see it. Like like every time, for example, I'm doing like a talking head video like that, and the camera zooms in when I'm making my point at the end of a sentence. Like that's done in post. Like it's not like I have a remote that's like, you know, pressing the button on the
Well,
zoom
you have me
on my
behind
lens.
it and I'm turning it. I'm zooming it in behind the lens all the time.
But like I zoom in like 135 or something like that, add a bit of sharpness, and yeah, it works. And even with like sports, when I say like I go to 200 or things like that, it kind of works in the sense that like there's so much movement and stuff, and you zoom in, it makes sense that it's a touch like less sharp. So it's to be expected. So it doesn't really bother people. But at the same time, I see it like a lot of people would, like I've had a conversation with that with someone who hired me for like consulting services, and they were kind of freaked out about the loss of quality when they were zooming in, because I was telling them like, yeah, zoom into the action. Like I want to see the release. I want to see like a catch, like just zoom into it. It doesn't matter if you have to go, you know, 150, 200%, like let's see it. But like, he was just concerned about the lack of quality. But it was like, honestly, like I can show you 2 or 3 of my videos and you won't even be able to tell when the quality loss happened. You just see it because you have access to the raw footage, so you can compare, and it's that comparison that is freaking you out. But if I don't have anything to compare with, I don't see it. It doesn't bother me. I don't flinch. But when you saw the original and you see the result, you're like, it looks so much different. You know what I mean?
So I got a question now, since you have a crop sensor in your FX30. So what focal lengths would you suggest for that? So I don't have a crop sensor, and I only had full frame cameras. I never had a crop sensor. So what focal lengths would you suggest for crop sensors? Because you are adding that crop. Like on the A7 IV that I have, it is a full frame. It's crop when it's 61.5. So I've already calculated that. Now with your APS-C, when you're buying a 70 to 100 or whatever, what focal lengths are you actually trying to get?
Well, to be honest, when I use like my FX30, I used to do behind the scenes stuff. So it's not really something that I use commonly to film sports myself. But, and when I do use crop like APS-C cameras a fair bit, but it's always when I'm reviewing a camera. So it doesn't really change, to be honest. I use the same lenses and I just adjust. And that's why like the 35 mil minimum on the Tamron was a bit, yeah, it could be a bit hard to deal with sometimes, but yeah, I would do it the exact same way where like, it's just, I would get the widest lens possible, which is my 16 to 35 and make the most of that. And then get my longer lens and make the most of that. Like it's the same, in theory, it's the same thing. I'm going for close up action that is hopefully not obstructed. Like I try to film from a perspective where when I'm filming like long lens, like I don't want back of people's heads in my shot. Like I can have someone walking past, but not like just sitting there in the corner of my screen. So that's the idea, like close-up shots that feel like you're right there, clean image, and then wider shots that have people in it. And now I'm making the most of the people around me and making them part of my frame, of my composition. But yeah, the fact that it's an APS-C or full frame doesn't really change that approach. It's just harder because it's tighter. So you have to take a few steps back, or sometimes it helps because sometimes there's such a thing as too wide. Like when you're filming, like let's say I'm going at the top of the stands to get like a bird's eye view. Most of the time, if it's not a sold out event, like the back rows are a bit empty. So actually being a bit tighter kind of helps get rid of a few empty seats. But yeah, it's the same strategy for me anyway. Would you do anything differently?
No, I mean you're better off to be tighter than seeing those empty seats for sure, because you want to make every event look sold out, especially when you're working for a team. The only thing that I always had variable lenses. I never had any prime lenses, and when I worked with you, you actually had a prime lens for your wide for a while. That was like your go-to. It was a 24, no?
Yeah, but that was for behind the scenes, so it was just something that I would put to film myself. So it didn't really bother me that it didn't, because I wouldn't be on the camera playing with the zoom anyway. So like, I guess it is like interesting to, because the thing is I can't put that camera too far from myself anyway, because first of all, I want to be able to see on the monitor what it looks like to see if I'm actually in the frame. So if it's 10 feet away, it's probably too far for me to do that. And so I'm not playing with the zoom that much. I'm just putting it in a position where it kind of makes sense. And then it's close and I can see myself and put myself in the right position. And there I go. So I use primes for that. But if I was filming action, I would probably stick to zoom lenses, which I do.
But my question was, do you notice the sharpness? Because prime lenses are supposed to be sharper than variable.
Nah.
So from that lens to your 16 to 35, have you noticed a difference in sharpness or not really, because you were just using it as a BTS lens?
Yeah, it's hard to tell because I'm filming such different type of content. But in saying that, like I think you can use, like I've used prime lens filming from the baseline, like some basketball, for example. Like I remember when I used like the gimbal to do like to film a basketball game, I would always have a prime lens on it. And I think it was a 35 mil because I wasn't filming just from the baseline. I was also like moving around on the side and stuff. And 35 mil was actually doing a great job. But can I say that I definitely noticed like something like in the sharpness? Not that much, to be honest, because there's just so much going on in the frame that it's hard to tell. Like if it was an interview and it was like a tight shot of the face and you can compare the zoom lens with the prime lens, you could probably tell by like the pores in the skin and things like that. But with action, I don't think I can see it in the edit. So I know people definitely can't see it on Instagram. You know what I mean?
Like I want to add a prime lens to my bag just for my interviews, because I do want that 1.4 or 1.8. And I do for my corporate stuff. In the sports world, I don't think I'd use it that often. Now, one of my favorite focal lengths, honestly, to shoot, like say if I had one focal length to stick with, would probably be 50 millimeter. I feel like you can accomplish so many great shots with a 50 millimeter. Well, what about you? Do you have a favorite focal length, or you just, now you got this new lens, you're just wide all the time?
Yeah, no, I'd say 35 is probably the
You're
most versatile one, I guess, because like I said, like from up close, it can be quite tight, and but then again, yeah, you can also get some good wide shots if you're on the side or if the action is just a bit further away. So you can get a lot of shot variety even with the prime 35, where if you're sticking at 35 the entire time, just by moving around, you can get a lot of tight shots and a lot of wide shots. So to me, that would probably be the most versatile focal length, I guess. But, and like I said, I've filmed a couple of basketball games that way and it turned out good, but you definitely need to move around. You can't just stay at the same spot because then you just get the exact same shot every single time. But yeah, I'd definitely a zoom lens is better. But if I had to choose one focal length, it would probably be 35.
okay. Well, listen, I mean, I think we answered all the questions about focal length. But the main key is, don't be afraid to change your lens, and don't be afraid to move around, and make it look like you have multiple cameras and multiple lenses with you, and that's how you're gonna tell your story the best way and get the best shots. Because everybody gets to that point in the game where they just leave that lens on a little too long, and you get too comfortable with that one lens on. Just remind yourself, look at the clock, look at where you are, look at what you want to accomplish, switch lenses and change positions.
Amen.
All right. Well, that's it for this episode of Game Day Glare. See you
Yeah.
guys.